Hi, everyone. It is a beautiful day out today. And as the sun is setting on today, it is also setting on the very special holiday of Passover, because we are now entering into the final phase of Passover. But when sun sets, it's not the end. When the sun sets, a new beauty emerges, the beauty of the stars, the beauty of the night, the energy of the evening. And therefore, today, as we enter into the last days of Pesach, I hope we do not see this as the final end of Pesach, but a new energy and a new and different opportunity. Just before I was driving here to get ready for the broadcast, I got off the phone with a friend of mine, very good friend, and he was telling me, he confided in me that, you know what, the first days of Pesach just didn't do it. It was so disconnected. Everything was on the Zoom and on the Zoom broadcast. Nobody knew the pages. It just wasn't the same thing. And it was really depressing, he said. He didn't get that energy. He didn't feel the energy of the day. And therefore, I told him, I understand. This first Pesach, or our whole life, is so unsettled and so different, and it's impossible for us to really tap into the things the way we were used to tapping into. However, we have a second chance, and that's the final days of Passover. Final days of Passover, maybe we don't have the whole ceremony of the Seder and all the planning and all the details that are relevant for that. However, we do have the personal connection, the time to spend personally. So it's not just a second chance for the beginning of Passover. It's actually the climax. It completes the process that we began. So we don't just left hanging. Many times you start a project and you just don't finish it. You just kind of go into the norm. Now's the time to really establish in our lives the great experience of Pesach, to tap into a very special and unique energy that exists in these last 2 days. So this evening, before Yontif, we're going to have a special program to help us tap into that. We're going to begin with a introduction of medley, of the Jewish medleys, of Passover medley. Then we will have a sermon or a conversation about these days. And then we will conclude with a very special Yiskor memorial service. A memorial service that usually takes place on Yontif, but because our synagogues are closed, and we should still do the memorial on Yontif, as we'll discuss later. But to get the feeling of the prayer and the service that takes place, we have invited with us, our guest Chazan, right, Cantor Yossi Goldstein, who's on the screen now, who's been with us on the holidays and will really able to tap into that very spiritual energy of the holiday. And once we are able to connect, hopefully we can bring that in to our celebration of the final days. So I'm going to allow or introduce, if I get these clicks right, introduce Cantor Yossi Goldstein, who's going to kick off this program with some medley. I just want to ask if anybody's there watching this on YouTube, if you can just send a comment so I know that it's working, and therefore we will continue. All right, Cantor Goldstein. Clap at your home. Make clap along. Thank you, Yossi. Thank you so much for taking of your time today to be able to spend with us and give us a little bit of that lively energy. My dear friends, thank you for those that are commenting on Facebook and YouTube. I know we're connected, so thank you for giving me that feedback. Too many names to mention, but I see you all and want to wish you all a good yontif as well. So I'd like to begin with a little story about one of the original finance ministers of Israel, who was there in the very beginning of the founding of the modern day Israel, as well as serving as a finance minister for many years. His name was Pinchas Sapir. Pinchas Sapir was the finance minister, and he was taking a tour of the different institutions that they were supporting, and they went to the Hebrew University. And he's walking around meeting the students and hearing a lot of complaints from the students, the finance minister, the source of funding. And they were talking about the situation on campus, how the garbage needs to be collected, and the tuition, and student loans, and the situation with the dorms. And he tells his assistant that's standing there on the right side, please make a note of all these things. And he's jotting down this pad of paper, walking around with the finance minister Sapir, and he's writing notes, listening very attentively to all the students. And as they're walking off the campus and nobody's looking, he tells his assistant, just throw the piece of paper in the garbage. Not much I can do about it anyway. Okay. The next stop was the jail. And again, he meets the inmates, and they're all giving him the list of goods. They're saying the environment needs to be a little better. The rooms need to be more comfortable, maybe a little air conditioner. He tells his assistant, please write it down. Air conditioner, TVs, more comfortable beds. And he's writing all this and he's paying close attention. On the way out, they're out of the correction facility. The assistant says, no, should I throw this paper out too? He says, what are you doing? Don't. The assistant asked the minister, Sapir, why? Why at the students, you just told me to throw it out, and here in the prisoners, you told me to keep it? He said, I'm never going back to college again. But who knows? One day I may have to be in jail, and I'd rather the situation be good. It's a real story, a cute story, but I think it's a story that teaches us now about the holiday. Because what happens when we live with our future? How does our future impact us? And I'm not asking what happens when we live in the future. If you're living in the future, you're probably an absent-minded professor. But what happens when we live now with our future, with what's going to happen in our future? Life is incredibly different. And the last days of Passover is about that. It's about taking us to the future. It's about teaching us how incredibly empowering our present can be if we glimpse into the future. And doesn't only tell us this in an abstract way. It's nice to know what's going to happen, but it actually teaches us how to do that. It actually teaches the most important step to achieve our ability to live with our future in our present. And when we can do that, and when we tap into that energy over the next 2 days, we will feel incredibly relieved, incredibly redeemed, incredibly refreshed to move forward in our present life. So let's explore in a nutshell. What are the next 2 days about? What happened on the 7th day? What is the 8th day of Pesach that we're about to celebrate? Well, on the 7th day, God split the sea. The Jewish people left Egypt, and the Egyptians were following them and chasing them and running after them. And we all know the story, Hollywood even presents it, The Jew Moshe lifts his hands. Nachshon goes through the sea splits. The Jewish people go through the other end. It drowns the Egyptians, and at that moment, the Jewish people burst out into song, into praise of God. It happened tonight, on the seventh day of Pesach. And this becomes the great message of the seventh day, the Jewish people going through the splitting of the sea. What happened on the eighth day? The eighth day is a day that's focused not on the exodus of Egypt, but on our future redemption through the coming of Mashiach. It talks about the future era. What will the future look like? So we have our first redemption on the seventh day of Pesach, and on the last day, before we move forward, we talk about that very sensitive and delicate issue called Mashiach, what the Jewish future will be like. Now, let me ask you a question. How do these two disconnected elements of our history, our distant past, when the Jews left Egypt, and what doesn't seem so apparently imminent, the redemption of Mashiach, imminent maybe not in time, but in idea, something which is abstract. How does our abstract future and our distant past connect to us today in our present in a very vibrant way? In other words, how do we make meaning out of this great Yom Tov of the last 2 days of Pesach? So let's go back a moment. There's something that happened when the Jewish people crossed the sea. It didn't happen anywhere else in the Torah, and it doesn't happen anywhere else in the redemption story that we read. The Jewish people cross the sea, they get to the other side, and what? They burst out into song. Az Yashir Moshe. Moshe dances and sings with the men. Miriam dances and sings with the women. That's where the tambourines come from. And everybody's ecstatic. Why? Why was there no song when they left Egypt? Why wasn't there a song when they were a day away from Egypt, when they were finally left? There's no song when the 10 plagues took place and other miracles that brought about the redemption. Why is it that only after they crossed the sea was there song? When they left Egypt, they didn't know they'll have an opportunity to sing again. When they left Egypt, that was their redemption. Why weren't they grateful? Why weren't they singing? And the answer the Rebbe gives us is because until they crossed the sea, and until the Egyptians were drowned in the ocean, in the sea, and the Jewish people knew there's no going back, their redemption was not complete. As long as the Jewish people were leaving Egypt, but were still connected to Egypt, as we say, there's a whole group of Jews that wanted to go back when things were going. As long as you didn't completely disconnect from the past bondage, you're never truly free. At the point that they knew that Egypt is completely out of their story, it's totally their past, now they were able to sing. This is such a powerful message. Because how many times in our life we can't move forward because we're still stuck in our past. We can't move forward because we can't forgive, whether it's in a relationship, people that may have wronged you, and because they told you, or they even did something wrong to you, that doesn't allow you to move forward. But that happened. That was in the past. But we are stuck with that past, and it doesn't allow us to truly redeem ourselves. With religion, many times people have negative experiences with religion. Oh boy, I can tell you stories, and I have my own negative experiences. But if you get stuck with those experiences and you don't let go, not let my people go, but let myself go. If you don't let those things go, then you can never really move forward. You can never really grow into something. So that's the message of the seventh day of Pesach. That's the tool. That's the incredible tool of allowing us to move into the future. The incredible tool of letting go of grievances, letting go of situations. It doesn't mean don't deal with them. But until you truly don't allow yourself to disconnect from a negative experience with a parent, a child, a boss, a friend, a teacher, a mentor, a rabbi, or your God, if you don't let go of the negative experience, you'll never be able to find the beauty in the other person sitting right across your table, your other person who loves you so much, but may have wronged you at one time. Seventh day of Pesach is the day that we sing because we're finally able to detach ourselves from the brutal bondage of Egypt, a brutal bondage that wasn't physical, a brutal bondage that was also mental. And this becomes the most important tool to allow us to even attempt to see our future. The eighth day of Pesach teaches us about that future, about Mashiach. What is Mashiach really? Mashiach is not just some utopian, fantastic thing that we have no idea to imagine. The idea of Mashiach, as it's talked into in our writings, is not about as much as the Mashiach, the Redeemer, but what will redemption bring to the world? It will bring peace. It will bring cure. It will bring an intense a degree of knowledge, a relationship with God, a relationship with truth. What a beautiful world that will be. And that's a future that is not so detached from our reality, because we can begin to live with that future. We can begin to live with the belief and understanding that the world can and will get better. Not better only physically, but morally, ethically. As dark as the world may appear to us at this point, our tradition teaches us, let's live with our future. Let's know there's a purpose. There is a destiny. Don't allow ourselves to get stuck in the current darkness, but allow yourself to move forward. Allow yourself to be able to live with the real idea of purity, of goodness. And if your neighbor isn't good or what's around you isn't good, doesn't mean I can't be good, because good is truth. Good is the future. And I want to live with that future right now. So what are the next 2 days? The next 2 days of the 7th and 8th day of Pesach, how do we climax Pesach, not wind down from Pesach? By remembering these 2 steps, the 2 steps of the 7th and 8th day, steps of letting go of something that is holding you back from seeing true beauty, and then envisioning that beauty and bringing it into how you conduct yourself. And that's why this is so important now, because now it's dark. Now we're still struggling. Now we're still like the Jews before they crossed the sea. We know, we don't know, we don't know, we don't know, we don't even know what we don't know. It's just so unsettling. But we have to let go of the darkness that's gripping us and look at the beautiful things around us. Look at the beautiful things that we can hold on to, not only in our present, but what is going to come in our future. The good, the peace, the pure, the knowledge, the intensification of a relationship. Bring it into your life now. Now we can live a life of redemption, of bringing our future into our present. I want to conclude with something very interesting I came across the other day, and I didn't believe this. I actually spent an hour, you can ask my kids, searching this online yesterday to make sure this is true, because I believe the message is so powerful. We all remember Y2K. Sounds like not only ages ago, but from a different era, right? Y2K. The fear, the world, everybody thought the world's going to fall apart, and everybody was concerned, almost like now, just in a different way, what's going to happen to the whole world, because all the computers were not programmed right. Excuse me. The New York Times on January 1st or December 31st or January 1st, year 2000, had a special section called the Millennium. And in that section, there is a front page cover of the New York Times of year 2100. So they basically had what 1900 was like, the front page. Then they had the 2000, the current front page of New York Times. And then they projected what the front page of the New York Times would be in 2100. By the way, I noticed the price was $9. I think we're getting close before 2100. But in any event, they had very interesting articles on the front page, like robots are demanding equality in voting. They want equal rights, the robots. Or that Cuba just received its statehood. All these different articles, and you can check it. It's right there online if you go to the archives. On the bottom left corner of the front page, what the editors of New York Times projected to be on their front cover was the Shabbat candlelighting times of that Friday night. Now, there's a little background to that story. I kid you not. At that time, Chabad, a good friend of mine actually, sponsored every Friday night on the bottom corner of the New York Times, the Shabbat candlelighting times. There's 2 lines. You were able to check it, and it would be circulated throughout the entire world. So the editors were asked, why did they put that advertisement on a newspaper that they were projecting 100 years forward? And they said they were actually thinking about it because it was on that Friday's New York Times. And they said, listen what they said, editor of the New York Times, they said that they projected that a lot of things are going to change in the next 100 years in the future. One thing won't change. Jewish women and girls will be lighting their Shabbat candles then, as they did now, as they've always done. Can you imagine? I kid you not. I didn't believe this. I checked it. It's on the front page cover of this projected 2100, year 2100 New York Times cover. That's a powerful message. Because, listen to this, when we can look into our future and realize that in that future, there's still something from our past and our present, that gives what we are doing a very powerful impact into the reality. Then it's real. So if you want to know if you're doing something real in your life, something true in your life, ask yourself the question, is it something that's just stuck in my past? Is it something that was important in the past, but really is not happening now? It surely is irrelevant in 100 years from now? Or is what I'm doing now going to be equally relevant in the future as it was in the past? Then you know it's real. Then you know you're living with your real future, because something that won't change in the future and was always there is something that is liberating to you, because now you have touched into something that is truly eternal. And this is why the Rebbe so adamant, I won't say adamantly, but it was so preoccupied with teaching us Chassidim, and hopefully through us Chassidim to all our communities, the importance of Mashiach. It wasn't about the Mashiach. It was the belief and Torah's viewpoint that there is a beautiful future. Let's not get distracted by the current darkness, but we can envision what that future is. If we can incorporate that into our present, then not only our future will be bright, we have a bright present. And when we live that way, then we live a powerful life. Certainly when that future is connected to our past, our traditions, our faith, the eternity of the values of Judaism. So therefore, my friends, as we prepare this Yontif, we don't get caught up in the trappings of the Seder. We don't get caught up in having to coordinate all the logistics of the evening. Let's get caught up in being a little bit more reflective. Let's make this Yontif a reflective holiday. Let's make it a meaningful holiday. And then let's make it a very relevant 2 days that will be very empowering to us for the days to come. And therefore, I want to wish you all a good Yontif, a meaningful Yontif, a Yontif in where we live with our future by letting go of the negative of our past. And by living in the future, we don't envision what the finance minister has envisioned, but the future of beauty, of peace, of harmony, of knowledge, of joy, of an empowerment to get and grab on to all the gorgeous and beautiful things that we have going now, because we are living with a beautiful future. We're living with a beautiful idea of the redemption, a redemption that began in Egypt, a redemption that will culminate visibly with coming of Mashiach, but travels through our own personal redemptions by holding on to the great, powerful message of our faith and our tradition. I want to wish you all a good Yontif. You know, one of the biggest messages that we have all been experiencing over the last 5 weeks is the fragility of our world, how fragile our world really is. And it comes at these times when our world is fragile, that we want to hold on to that strength of what is truly eternal. The ideas that I talked about till now express the power of our soul. And many times when life just goes on, we forget about the valuable asset that we have, which is called our neshama, our soul. But it's when the world is so fragile that the power of the soul emerges. And therefore, on the holidays, on this Yontif, we have the Yiskor service. The Yiskor service is a memorial, paying tribute to those of our family that have passed on, our parents, our siblings. Why? Because when we think of them, we feel the reality and the impact of our soul. The way we as mortals feel eternity is when we think about those who passed, our parents, our grandparents, those that are dear to us. And we realize that although their body is not here, they still have a presence in our life. And that's eternity. And that's why when it comes on this Yontif, or we think about the people that have passed. On Thursday, if our synagogues would have been open, we would have a special memorial service so that we can connect to those souls, but not just to think about them. There's an obligation that when you do the Yiskor, you give tzedakah, you give charity. What is the idea of charity? That you anchor that feeling into something tangible. And tangible doesn't necessarily mean a penny in the tzedakah box. It could mean, think of something that your mom or dad or sibling that you're remembering did in their lives. What was important to them? And maybe you can incorporate it into your life. What would they like to see happening from a point of truth? So as we are going to have Chazan Goldstein help us tune into that energy of the Yiskor, although Yiskor will be said on Thursday, and I will, at the end of the broadcast, put a website where you can download the actual prayer that you can say on Thursday. But think about the departed soul. Think about the soul. Think about your soul. Think about the eternity that soul gives into the things that we do. I'd like to ask Chazan Goldstein, who's going to first begin with the memorial prayer of Kel Malay, at which point you can all reflect on the souls of the people that have departed. And afterwards, he's going to sing a very beautiful tribute that he always does at our synagogue on Yom Kippur, the very famous song, the Yiddish Mama, talking about the greatness of the Jewish mother. And for all those that are mourning the loss of their mothers, hopefully this will touch their soul. But whether it's your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, it's a song that stirs the soul of memory. Chazan Goldstein, are you there? Do we hear you?
Yes.
You ready? You ready?
As always.
All right, here you go, my friend.
על כנפי השכינה במעלויס קדושים ותארים כזוי הרורוקיה מה זהירי ויש נשמע שהולכו לעולמו ובהבות שנדרו צדקו וביד הסורס נשמוסו בגן עדן תהיינו חסום לכם בלא רחמים Yastireyu, Beseiser Knofo, Leo Elohim, Vehitzroin, Bitzroin Chaim es Nish Mosoi, Ya Hashem, Unachalosoi, V'yanuach, B'sholoi Ma'mishkov, V'noem
Thank you, Rabbi Goldstein. As he prepares for the next song, I will post our website where you can download more information about the Yiskor service. You can also print out the actual service that you can say anytime on Thursday. And at this time, I'd like to remind you that candlelighting tonight is at 7:20. Tomorrow is 8:21. And on Thursday, we will be doing the Yiskor service. And as I mentioned earlier, you go jewishcenter.info/service, and you'll be able to download the prayer and all other information relevant for the holiday. We will ask Chazan Goldstein to sing the Yiddish Mama, and then we have a few more PSA announcements right afterwards. Cantor.
Und doch hast men fallet das mit Tränen vergiss. Frieden gibt mir keine, es wird nicht kein Gewinn. Ach, oh, ihr sollt der schon aus sich mein jüdische Mame, gibt doch kein besseres mein jüdische Mame, und maybe ich steh doch richtig fett in euch, wenn die Mame ist da, mit König finster werde Gott, wenn ihr auf einmal in Feuer, in Wasser, und sie geht auf und feiert nicht halt in ihr Zeit, ist doch gewiss die größte Sinn. Oi, wie glücklich und reich ist der Mensch Gott, das schöne Matone Geschenk von Gott, nur in Altigkeit jüdische Oi, Mame, Oi, Mame,
Yasher Koyach, Cantor Yossi, for that beautiful rendition of the Yiddish Mama. And I would like to wish everybody a good Yontif. As you see on our bottom here, jewishcenter.info/service is where you have our information on Yiskor. But if you want to have information on the general prayers for Yontif and different downloads for the prayer service, you can go to jewishcenter.info/virtual shul. jewishcenter.info virtual shul, and then you will be able to download the different things for Yontif. My dear friends, I want to thank you, because for me to prepare and organize these things, these events, these sessions together, actually forces me out of my confinement and the situation we're all dealing with, everyone in their level, and allows me to refresh myself in order to be able to teach and to guide. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. And hopefully after Yom Tov, I'd say Sunday or Monday, we will have a fresh new line of programming that we will do virtually, as I'm kind of figuring out the different software that we have. But we will be able to engage more often, in a more interactive way. But in the meantime, let's live in our present. Let's live in our present with our future, and use day 7 and day 8 not to wind down a Pesach, but to build up to its climax. Everyone have a good Yontif. And Yossi, you have one more quick song for us? Yontif, everybody. Hey, clap. So imagine we're all together. Good Yontif, Yossi. Good Yontif, everyone who's been watching, and hope to see you after Yontif. Have an enjoyable evening and a great, inspiring last 2 days of Pesach. Good Yontif.